Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how, as we age, our bodies seem to slow down and simple tasks become more challenging? The truth is, it doesn't have to be this way. Make no mistake, staying active and mobile is within your reach no matter your age. In fact, it's more than possible, it's essential. Today we're diving into 7 powerful steps that can help you maintain your mobility, boost your confidence, and live life to the fullest. So whether you're walking less or feeling a little more restricted, let's explore how you can embrace a more active, fulfilling lifestyle. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. Today, we're embarking on a deeply meaningful journey to uncover 7 transformative strategies that can help you not only maintain your mobility, but also restore your confidence, improve your balance, and lead a vibrant life, regardless of how much you may be walking these days. It's more than just about movement. It's about reclaiming your freedom, embracing life to the fullest, and moving with purpose and joy. I know that as we age, we often face the harsh reality that we can't do the things we once did with the same ease. But that doesn't mean we should accept limitations. In fact, it's the exact moment to embrace a new, fulfilling path. Throughout this journey, we'll hear powerful and inspiring stories of individuals between the ages of 65 and 85 people who, despite facing similar challenges, have found the courage to push past their struggles and reinvent their lives in the most extraordinary ways. These stories will inspire you, remind you that you are not alone in this, and show you the boundless possibilities still ahead. I'm deeply moved by their resilience and commitment to not just survive, but thrive. But it doesn't stop there. Alongside these stories, we'll be offering you concrete, practical tips that you can begin applying right now. Simple, effective strategies that will empower you to take control of your well-being. You'll also have access to invaluable resources and expert advice to help guide you every step of the way. Together, we'll nurture your strength, confidence, and joy, helping you to keep moving forward with the unwavering belief that age is just a number and there is so much more life has to offer. As we navigate this journey, remember that every step you take, no matter how small, is a victory. You have the power to shape your future, and I believe with all my heart that you are capable of remarkable things. Let's embrace the gift of movement, for it holds the key to not just a longer life, but a life filled with purpose, connection, and boundless possibilities. Story number 1, practicing chair-based exercise, reclaiming movement, reclaiming joy. Maria, at 68, was a woman who had always been alive with rhythm. Dance wasn't just a hobby for her, it was her heartbeat, the language of her soul, the vibrant thread that connected her to the world around her. Each step, each graceful turn was a reflection of her inner joy, a testament to the woman she was and the life she had lived. But that all came crashing down when osteoarthritis crept into her life. The pain in her joints, once a quiet nuisance, soon became a constant nagging presence, making even simple actions like walking feel like a monumental challenge. Every step she took, once light and effortless, now felt like a burden, as if her body was betraying her and stealing away her spirit. Slowly but surely, she began to feel like a shadow of the woman she once was, small, confined, and disconnected from the world she had once embraced so fully. The thought of never dancing again, of never feeling the release and joy of movement, was a thought that haunted her. Maria found herself sinking into sadness, afraid that her days of freedom and expression were over. She was on the brink of giving up, certain that the dance floor would forever be out of her reach. But then a ray of hope appeared when her doctor suggested something that she initially thought was too simple, too mundane: chair-based exercise. At first, Maria scoffed at the idea. How could this ever replace dancing, she thought. It's nothing more than a chair and some gentle stretches. But even in her skepticism, a tiny flicker of curiosity remained. What did she have to lose? To her surprise, chair yoga became her salvation. It wasn't the same as dancing, but it was still movement, still life, and still something that brought her joy. The exercises allowed her to move without fear of injuring herself further, gently improving her strength, flexibility, and balance without putting unnecessary strain on her joints. What she discovered was that the movements, though slower and more controlled than the dances of her youth, still gave her a sense of freedom. She began incorporating some of her old dance steps into the exercises, bringing back those fleeting moments of fluidity, of grace. With each session, Maria was rediscovering a piece of herself she thought was lost forever. But the true gift wasn't just physical. In her chair yoga class, Maria found something that touched her heart in ways she hadn't anticipated: a community. These new friends, each with their own struggles and stories, understood her pain. They celebrated her progress not with judgment, but with empathy and encouragement. The bonds they shared went beyond mere exercise. They were a support system, a lifeline that reminded Maria she was not alone. She had found a place where she could grow, not just in body but in spirit. It was in this circle of kindred souls that Maria realized that while the dance floor might have been taken from her, the dance of life, filled with connection, strength, and joy, was still hers to embrace. And with each new day, she danced a little more. Story number 2, the power of aquatic exercise. John had always been an active man, someone who loved to stay on his feet and take on life with vigor. But at 75, everything changed after his hip surgery. The surgery itself had been successful, a relief, and yet the road to recovery was longer and far more difficult than he had ever imagined. Each day felt like a test of endurance, and the fear of making one wrong move or suffering another injury weighed heavily on him. He was terrified of falling, of making a misstep that would undo all the hard work he had done to heal. The thought of re-injuring himself paralyzed him. So instead of pushing himself, John withdrew. He avoided exercise altogether, convincing himself that the safest course of action was to stay still, to avoid movement. But in his stillness, John began to feel his body grow weaker, stiffer, and more fragile with each passing day. His muscles seemed to shrink, his joints stiffened, and the sense of vulnerability that had already plagued him began to grow stronger. He felt trapped, as though his own body was betraying him, as though life was slipping further and further away. When John's physical therapist suggested aquatic exercise as part of his recovery plan, John recoiled at the thought. The idea of exercising in the water felt foreign and uncomfortable. After all, he hadn't been able to swim properly for years, and the mere thought of being submerged made him feel exposed. He was embarrassed by his limitations, convinced that he would be judged for not being able to do what once came so easily to him. But the therapist, with gentle persistence, reassured John. Even the gentlest movements in the water can make a huge difference, she told him. And so, reluctantly, John agreed to give it a try. What happened next was nothing short of transformative. The water, at first cold and unfamiliar, soon became his refuge. The buoyancy of the water gently supported his body, taking the pressure off his joints and easing the pain that had become a constant companion. For the first time in months, John felt a sense of freedom that he hadn't realized he'd lost. The water didn't just help him exercise his body, it allowed him to rediscover movement itself, without the constant fear of falling or overexerting himself. With each gentle movement, he began to rebuild his strength, slowly but surely. His muscles, once weak and stiff, started to regain their tone. His joints felt looser, less painful. But perhaps even more importantly, John began to heal in ways he hadn't expected. The water became more than just a medium for physical therapy. It became a sanctuary for John's mind and spirit. It was a place where he could move freely, without fear, without the weight of anxiety hanging over him. The gentle resistance of the water helped him reconnect with his body in a way he hadn't thought possible. It wasn't just about physical recovery anymore. John was reclaiming a part of himself. His confidence, his joy, his sense of connection with life. The water gave him something precious back. The joy of movement, the sense of ease, and the reminder that he could still thrive, even in his later years. John learned that healing wasn't just about fixing what was broken. It was about rediscovering the joy of living fully again. Story number 3, walking aids, your allies in mobility. Sarah, in her 80s, was a woman with a fierce spirit full of pride and independence. She had spent her life standing tall, facing challenges head-on and never backing down. So when the suggestion of using a walker came up, she refused. To her, it felt like a concession she wasn't willing to make. A walker, she thought, would be a symbol of weakness, a public display of her aging body, a reminder of her limitations. It was as if admitting that she needed help would be an acceptance of defeat, and Sarah wasn't ready to embrace that. No, she was determined to manage on her own, even though she knew deep down that her balance wasn't what it used to be. She'd had a few close calls, moments where she'd wobbled dangerously or felt the sharp panic of almost losing control, but her pride kept her going. She was convinced that if she just held on a little longer, if she kept walking without assistance, she would somehow defy her age. But one day everything changed. As she was walking to the grocery store, that familiar, unsettling feeling washed over her, her feet slipping, her body swaying, and the ground coming up much too quickly. It was a near fall, one that sent a wave of terror through her body. She caught herself just in time, but it shook her to the very core. The truth hit her hard. Her pride was putting her at risk. The fear of looking old, of acknowledging her physical limits, was preventing her from living fully. It wasn't just about appearance, it was about safety, about living her life without the constant fear of falling, of being trapped in her own limitations. The realization was humbling, but it was also freeing. That day, Sarah did something she never thought she would do. She accepted the walker. It wasn't a symbol of defeat, but rather a tool for independence. She stopped seeing it as a crutch and started to view it as a bridge to a fuller, richer life. The walker gave her something she had longed for but hadn't realized she was missing: stability. With it, she no longer feared the shaky steps that once made her feel vulnerable. She could move confidently again, step by step, without the constant anxiety of falling. The walker opened doors that she had closed off for too long. She was able to walk through her neighborhood with ease, to visit the local farmer's market, to meet friends and neighbors without worry. She felt safe walking to the park again, enjoying the fresh air, the simple beauty of nature, and the connection with the world around her. It wasn't just about getting from one place to another anymore. The walker gave Sarah back something far more precious: her freedom. She was able to live her life on her own terms again, without the fear that had once kept her isolated. It wasn't about looking old or frail. It was about embracing her life, her journey, and the joy of living confidently, no matter what age she was. Sarah had found a new way to live fully, and in doing so, she discovered that accepting help wasn't a sign of giving up. It was a step toward living better, living safer, and living with joy. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Story number 4. Strength training for stability. At 78, David felt like his body was slowly turning against him. His legs, once strong and dependable, now felt weak and unsteady. Even the simplest tasks, getting up from a chair, climbing stairs, or carrying a bag of groceries, had become monumental challenges. Every step was a reminder of his diminishing strength, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his body was betraying him. It was as if his world was shrinking piece by piece as his mobility faltered. The freedom he once took for granted, moving easily, walking without pain, seemed like a distant memory. It was as though his own body was trapping him, limiting his ability to live life fully. David tried to stay active and regain some strength by following a few exercises he found online, but the workouts were too intense, leaving him frustrated, exhausted, and even fearful of pushing too hard. He was convinced that he was doomed to a life of increasing immobility, unable to do the things he loved or keep up with the pace of the world around him. But then his doctor made a recommendation that would change everything. He suggested David work with a personal trainer who specialized in training older adults, a professional who would understand his unique challenges and design a plan tailored to his needs. Reluctantly, David agreed. What he didn't expect was how much this decision would transform his life. The trainer took the time to listen to his concerns, to understand the fear and hesitation that had been holding him back. Rather than pushing David to jump into high-intensity exercises, the trainer started him off with gentle resistance training, using light weights and resistance bands. These small, controlled movements were the perfect starting point. The trainer also emphasized proper form and technique, ensuring that every exercise was done with safety in mind to avoid injury. At first, it wasn't easy. The discomfort in his muscles, the frustration when progress seemed slow, it all felt discouraging. There were days when David wanted to give up, when the ache in his legs felt overwhelming, and the thought of going through another workout felt like too much. But something began to shift. As the weeks went by, David realized that building strength wasn't just a physical endeavor. It was about mental resilience too. With every session, he learned to push past his doubts, to embrace the small victories, like being able to lift a grocery bag with ease or standing for longer periods without feeling like his legs might give out. Each improvement, no matter how small, became something to celebrate. David started to see the results, both physically and emotionally. As his strength grew, so did his confidence. He began to feel more control over his own body again, a feeling he had feared he would never experience again. He was able to play with his grandchildren without worrying about tiring out, something that had once been a distant hope. He could carry heavier objects without struggling, and the stairs that once seemed like a daunting obstacle now felt manageable. But perhaps the most remarkable change of all was that David, the man who had once feared he was destined to live a life of immobility, was now walking with a newfound sense of independence. In fact, he even took it a step further. He joined a local hiking group, something he never thought he'd be able to do again. The feeling of the earth beneath his feet, the freedom to walk among the trees, and the companionship of fellow hikers, it all reminded him of just how far he had come. He was no longer defined by his physical limitations. He was stronger, more stable, and more independent than he had been in years. David had rediscovered the power of perseverance, of believing in his own potential, and of taking small steps toward reclaiming his life. With the support of his trainer, he had found the strength to overcome not just his physical challenges, but also the mental barriers that had once held him back. Now, he was living with a renewed sense of possibility, knowing that no matter his age, he could continue to grow, to move, and to thrive. Story number 5. The importance of regular stretching. At 80 years old, Eleanor's body felt like a prison. Her joints were perpetually stiff and achy, each movement accompanied by a dull, persistent pain that seemed to seep into every part of her life. Simple tasks, things she had once done without a second thought, had become overwhelming challenges. Getting dressed, bending down to tie her shoes, or reaching for something on a high shelf. All of these actions became daily struggles. The pain, like an unwelcome shadow, followed her everywhere. It was as if her body was slowly betraying her, and with each new ache, she felt more and more limited in what she could do. Eleanor tried to move as little as possible, afraid that even the slightest movement might make the pain worse. The idea of stretching, something she had always associated with the young and the flexible, seemed like a distant memory. At her age, she thought stretching would be useless. How could it make a difference now? But then Eleanor's doctor offered a different perspective. He explained that stretching was not just for the young or the fit. It was an essential practice for people of all ages, especially as we grow older. Maintaining flexibility, he explained, was crucial for keeping joints healthy and reducing the kind of chronic pain that was starting to take over her life. He encouraged her to incorporate gentle stretches into her daily routine, ones that wouldn't push her too hard but would make a real difference. The doctor also referred her to a physical therapist, someone who could guide her through the process and help her learn the right techniques to avoid injury. At first, Eleanor was hesitant. She feared that she might hurt herself, that even a simple stretch could send her into a spiral of pain. But with her doctor's encouragement, she decided to give it a try. She began slowly, carefully easing into each stretch, taking it one small movement at a time. To her surprise, she began to feel a difference. It wasn't instant, nothing was instant, but over time, the stiffness in her joints started to ease. The pain became more manageable. For the first time in ages, Eleanor could move with a little more comfort, a little more freedom. Her body felt less like an obstacle and more like a vessel she could still rely on. Perhaps the most profound change came when Eleanor returned to her garden. It had once been her greatest joy, her sanctuary. But in recent years, it had become something she could only visit from a distance, unable to bend or kneel without pain. But now, with the help of stretching, she could once again tend to her flowers and vegetables. She could bend down, reach up, and move around her beloved garden with ease. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental to Eleanor. The healing she experienced wasn't just physical, it was emotional as well. Stretching, in a way, became a release. It wasn't just about loosening tight muscles, it was about letting go of the tension, the frustration, and the years of pain that had built up inside her. As she stretched, she also released the weight of her worries, her fears, and the mental burden of living in constant discomfort. In that quiet moment of stretching, Eleanor realized something powerful. Flexibility wasn't just about the body. It was also about the mind and spirit. She had found a way to reconnect with herself, to release the tightness in both her joints and her heart. With each stretch, Eleanor not only regained movement in her body, but also found a new sense of freedom. She could take long, pain-free walks with her dog, something she hadn't been able to do for years. She had learned that it was never too late to make a change, to take control of her health, and to rediscover the joy of movement. Eleanor had redefined her limits and discovered that with patience, care, and the willingness to let go, she could continue to grow, to stretch, and to live her life with newfound joy and ease. Story number 6, balance training. Robert's recent fall shattered more than just his physical confidence. It rattled his sense of security. At 72, every step he took became laden with the fear of falling again. His once lively walks around the neighborhood were now replaced with hesitations and anxious glances at every uneven surface, every slight incline. The thought of leaving his house alone filled him with dread. He felt trapped, isolated in a cycle of fear and inactivity, convinced that his best days of independence were behind him. His daughter, seeing his growing anxiety, suggested Tai Chi, hoping it would help him regain his strength and confidence. But Robert was skeptical. It's too slow, he thought, too gentle to make a real difference. He was also embarrassed by his lack of coordination. The idea of moving in such a controlled, deliberate way felt uncomfortable and out of reach, but reluctantly he decided to give it a try. And in doing so, he uncovered something far beyond his expectations. Tai Chi was nothing like he had imagined. It wasn't just a series of slow, flowing movements. It was a practice of building strength, balance, and coordination in ways Robert had never thought possible. As he moved, each step grounded him more firmly in his body, making him feel more stable and secure with each passing day. It wasn't just about strengthening his muscles or improving his posture. It was about reconnecting with his body, regaining a sense of control, and learning to trust himself again. The gentle movements worked together to help him develop a deeper awareness of his body's limits and strengths. He started feeling more confident in his movements, less afraid of what had once seemed like an inevitable fall. Slowly, the cycle of fear and inactivity began to break. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment too below to let me know that you are still here with me. What amazed Robert most was the emotional shift that Tai Chi brought him. His fears didn't just lessen, they transformed into a grounded sense of peace. He wasn't just practicing physical movements, he was building resilience inside and out. Robert's newfound confidence didn't stop with him. He was so inspired by the change Tai Chi had brought to his life that he decided to share it with others. He began leading a Tai Chi class at his local senior center, offering a space for others who, like him, had struggled with fear and insecurity as they aged. As he guided his students, he felt a deep sense of connection and empowerment. He had come full circle, from a man afraid to leave his house to someone who was helping others regain their balance and confidence. He rediscovered the joy of walking in the park, no longer burdened by the constant fear of falling, and found a supportive community of people who understood his challenges and celebrated his growth. No longer isolated or afraid, Robert embraced a new sense of possibility, knowing that he had not only helped himself, but had also helped others reclaim their strength and sense of independence. Margaret, in her early 70s, was determined to stay active. She loved her daily walks, the fresh air, the rhythm of her feet hitting the pavement, the sense of freedom it gave her. But she had a tendency to push herself too hard. She ignored the subtle aches and pains that signaled her body's need for rest, convinced that if she didn't keep up her pace, she was somehow failing herself. There were days when her enthusiasm led her to overdo it, leaving her exhausted, frustrated, and sometimes even injured. These setbacks would set her back for days, and it became a pattern that left her feeling defeated. Margaret knew something had to change, but she wasn't sure what. That was until she realized something profound. Staying active wasn't about pushing her limits. It was about finding a sustainable rhythm, a balance between movement and rest that honored what her body needed. She began to listen to her body in a way she hadn't before. Rather than pushing through the pain, she learned to recognize the signals her body was sending her. She started adjusting her activity level accordingly, taking shorter, more frequent walks that gave her the time and space to truly savor the experience. On days when she felt tired, she incorporated rest breaks without guilt, allowing her body to recover and recharge. To her surprise, Margaret found that she enjoyed these shorter walks even more. The slower pace allowed her to appreciate the beauty around her, the colors of the flowers, the warmth of the sun, the chatter of birds. She could connect with friends along the way without the pressure of rushing, of feeling like she had to keep going until she was completely spent. Through this new approach, Margaret discovered the power of mindful movement. She began to realize that movement wasn't just about checking off a physical goal. It was about being present in her body, feeling the strength and grace in each step, and appreciating what she could do rather than focusing on what she couldn't. She learned to be kind to herself, to accept that rest and recovery were just as important as pushing herself to move. Margaret's approach to exercise transformed from a task to a practice of self-care. She rediscovered the joy in moving her body without the need for perfection or performance. And in that space of gentleness, she found something more precious than S. As we've seen in the stories of Robert, Eleanor, and Margaret, the journey of aging gracefully isn't about pushing ourselves to the brink or allowing fear to hold us back. It's about listening to our bodies, finding balance, and discovering new ways to move through life with strength and confidence. Whether it's through Tai Chi, stretching, or taking time to rest, the key is understanding that we can continue to grow, evolve, and thrive no matter our age. So, what have you learned from today's video? Is there one lesson, one practice that you feel inspired to bring into your own life? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below and let us know one thing you've learned and how you plan to put it into practice. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more empowering content. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to hear how you're embracing the journey ahead.